Last week we started a series called Drive, and we're talking about the things that drive us to pursue God. Maybe you're here today and you look around and you say, why are all these people so seemingly happy to be here? You know, hopefully you feel that way, that people are excited to be at church and to pursue God. And I don't know, sometimes when you're in a scenario where you sort of maybe don't understand what motivates other people, it can be a little confusing and disorienting. Well, we're talking about that in this 3-week series. What are the motivating factors? Like, why do people want to pursue God? It seems like it's just kind of unnecessary. You know, a lot of people think that sort of religion or faith is a crutch for the weak, and it sort of bogs down my Sundays, and you know, you'd rather just stay home and watch sports or whatever. And hey, listen, I get you. I love to watch sports on Sunday. One of my favorite things to do is to go home and to sit down and to get a Coke and grab some lunch or some chips and nachos or whatever. Man, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it right now. But I like to just sit down and relax. It's the end of the week. I try to bribe my kids into watching some golf with me. You know, they'll watch football with me, but golf is they can't do it, you know. But you know, maybe you're like that. Maybe you're like, well, what would drive a person to go to church? Maybe some of you are like, what would drive a person to watch golf, right? But here's what we're doing in this series. We're investigating this very question. And when we looked last week at the drive for good, like some people are driven by good. Like they want to be good. They want to have the good life. They want to have, you know, live a good, honorable life. A lot of parents want to make sure that they raise their kids with some faith and with some religion, and because they want their kids to be good and productive in life, and all of those things are great. We talked about that last week, how the pursuit of God is driven by this desire to honor God and to be good and to be virtuous. That's a great reason. And today we're going to look at the second reason for pursuing God. And today we're going to talk about being driven by purpose, because the fact is, the people who are following Jesus, the people who have discovered a relationship with Jesus Christ, are the people in this world that have the greatest sense of purpose of everybody. Now, I know that not every Christian understands that yet. So if you're here today and you're a follower of Jesus, you've already signed up for this thing and you call yourself a Christian, that's great. But if you feel like you're missing a sense of purpose in your life, today's message is for you. And if you're here today saying, I'm not really sure that I want to do this thing, I'm not sure that I want to pursue God, you're still on the fence, this message is also for you, because you're going to learn that Christians, followers of Jesus, are driven by purpose. So take out a Bible or your Bible app and let's get into week 2 of Drive. Last week we talked a little bit about the great Greek philosopher Aristotle and his quest for the good life. He was trying to discover what the good life is and how a person could find the good life. And one of the things that Aristotle discovered, and I think Jesus would agree with him, is that there's no way that you can have a good life if you don't know what your purpose is. In other words, if you don't know how you're supposed to function, like what you're here for, then you can't have a good life. So a good life is inextricably connected to a well-functioning life. If you want to live well, you have to learn how to function well. And what that means is, what were we made to do? And if we were made to do something, then we should do that, because if we don't do that, then we're not going to really ever discover the good life. And I think this is connected to this idea of being driven by purpose. Jesus talked about this a lot. So many people in history have been driven to pursue God because it leads to a life of service, mission, and legacy. We get this from Jesus himself, who, no offense to all you Greek philosopher buffs out there, was so much smarter, wiser, better than Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, any of those guys. Jesus taught that if you pursue God, you will be a person of purpose. And it starts with a life of service. I think one of the most shocking revelations in the Bible, if you're reading through the Bible, and I really encourage you to do that. You can use our chapter a day Bible reading plan online. But one of the greatest revelations you'll have is that Jesus came to serve, not to be served. It's amazing to understand that because Jesus is God. He's not just a prophet. He's not just a good guy. He's not just another man. The Bible makes it clear. Jesus makes it clear. Jesus is God. And if this was sort of in the business world, maybe you have a boss who's like this. You know, a boss would not come in and say, hey guys, I'm the boss. I'm in charge. How can I serve you? That's just not how the world works. That's just not how most people would do it. But Jesus was establishing a kingdom upside down, and he set this up so that he came, he said, hey guys, I'm God. I'm the great I am. I'm Yahweh. I am God himself. I created the world. I was here at the very beginning of everything. I was here before you were even a thought, all of this stuff. And yet Jesus, after saying all of that about his true identity, Jesus said, I'm here to serve. This is illustrated so well in the story of the Last Supper when he sits down with his disciples in John chapter 13 and he has this final meal with them. This was before he was going to go to the cross. Now, they didn't understand this, but he has this Passover meal with them. It was a meal rich with tradition for Jewish people, and he sits down with them to eat, and there's no servant to wait on them, which I'm sure had to be strange for the disciples. And Jesus got up, and he wrapped a towel around his waist, and he became the servant. And he started going around washing one by one every single one of his disciples' feet, to include Judas himself, the guy that was going to betray him into the hands of the Romans. Jesus washed all of their feet, every single one of them. And then look what he said next. After washing their feet, he put on his robe again, and he sat down, and he turned it into a teaching moment. And he said, do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. Put yourself in Jesus' shoes or in his sandals for just a minute. What would you have done at your last dinner? I mean, it's a little scary, a little frightening to think about that for yourself, you know. I mean, if you could only just not think about what Jesus did and cheat, right? But just think about it for yourself. Like, really, honestly, what would you have done? I would have made everybody serve me. I would have made them grill out. I would have made them, you know, cook my favorite meal. I mean, I would have said, hey, listen, this is my Last Supper. This isn't the Last Supper for the disciples. They were going to have more meals, right? This was the Last Supper for Jesus. Jesus knew he was about ready to go to the cross. This was his last meal. Here's a great question for small groups this week. What's your favorite meal? If you could have one more meal, what would it be? And I'm sure that it would be something that someone else was cooking for you. And yet Jesus, at his Last Supper with them, Jesus becomes the servant. And Jesus does this incredible thing, and the reason he does it is because he's setting an example for them. And he's trying to teach this truth that, guys, if you want to have a fulfilling, satisfying, good life, if you want to be a pursuer of God, you have to follow in my footsteps. You have to be a servant. What a motivation for the pursuit of God. To be driven by this desire to serve and help. You know, one of the things that we teach in our foundations class is that we grow by serving others. And just think about it. The people in your household, the most mature people in your household, are the ones who are serving others. That's what always impresses me in a young person. When I see a young person who is outward looking, who's not just looking at his or her own needs. Sometimes you'll see that in a young person, 8, 9 years old. My son has this in him. He's 12 years old, and he really does. He looks out for other people's needs, and that's so impressive to see. Whenever I see that, I say, now that's someone who's special, because that's someone who's following in the footsteps of Jesus. What a motivator. Who wouldn't want to follow a God who has that kind of humble attitude? Pursuit of God means that you have a life of service. And it leads to something even deeper than that. A pursuit of God leads to a life of mission. Jesus was a man on a mission. He knew what his mission on earth was, and he was clearly heading toward that beautiful mission. His mission was to go to the cross and die on the cross for your sins and my sins and the sins of the world, and 3 days later to raise from the dead, proving his authority over sin and the grave and even hell itself. Jesus was a man on a mission, and Jesus invited his disciples to be people on a mission. Look at what it said in John 15. Jesus said, "There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends." That was his mission. And he said, "You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends, since I have told you everything the Father told me." And look at what he says. He's talking about mission here now. He says, "You didn't choose me. I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name." Jesus was a man on a mission, and the followers of Jesus are men and women on mission. And the mission is real simple. Jesus said it right there. The mission is to go and bear fruit. Now, I think about fruit in two different ways. Number one, it's the fruit of the Spirit, so to speak. The fruit of a good life, like we talked about last week, that you start having in increasing measure things like love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. Like these things just begin to show themselves more and more in the life of a follower of Jesus, a pursuer of God, because you're on a mission to bear fruit in your life. People would say about you, "Man, something is different about you. You have changed." That's the fruit that comes out of the life that has been just taken over by God and a love for God. But I think the other part of fruit, and Jesus, I think, was talking about this, was the fruit of making disciples. Like fruit that would last. Like when Jesus called his disciples, a lot of them were fishermen, and he said, "Come, and I will make you fishers of men." In other words, he was inviting them to be catalysts. He was inviting them to be disciple makers. He was inviting them to be the kind of followers who would invite other people to follow alongside them. Not to sort of condescendingly look at people and say, "I'm so much better than you, I'm so much more religious than you." No, to be the kind of people that looks at people around you and says, "Come, I'm following Jesus. Why don't you follow him with me?" Do you know that that's the mission that you're on? If you're a Christian here today, you need to know that you should be a person on a mission. That should be a central part of your pursuit of God. In fact, you won't ever really grow in your relationship with God until you begin to participate with God in this mission. Jesus said it like this, "I have come to seek and save the lost." And that mission extends to us. That we should be people that seek and save the lost. We can't make people pursue God, but we can invite people to pursue God, and we can help them to do it through mentoring and disciple making. This is what Jesus called us to do. We should be people on a mission. We should have a point to our lives. And see, this kind of mission leads to this third thing, and that is a life of legacy. You know, the older I get, the more I think about this word legacy. I think in my teens, I didn't really think about legacy very much. But the older I get, the more I tell myself, I want to leave a legacy for my kids, for my wife, for someday grandkids. I want to leave a legacy in my life. I want people to say, "Man, that guy did this or he did that, or he made a difference in this world. Like his life mattered." I want to leave a legacy. You know, the greatest legacy that we can leave is the legacy of a pursuit of God. That's the greatest legacy we can leave. There's no other legacy that's more important. There's nothing greater that you can do in your life. Now listen to this. This is so important. When I understood this, it was like a revelation for me. There's no greater thing you can do in your life than to help someone pursue God. So parents, if you're followers of Jesus, one of the greatest legacies, the greatest legacy you can leave for your kids is to help them to pursue God like you are pursuing God. What a legacy. That's better than any money you can leave them. That's better than anything you can teach them in school. That's better than sending them to college even. All these things are wonderful things. But the greatest legacy that you can leave your kids is to help them to pursue God, to model for them a pursuit of God, to invite them along with you to pursue God. You know, my wife and I do this with our kids. They're 12 and 14 now. And we're in such a critical point in their life. Every week, we do family devotionals with them. Use the resources online to do it. That's what we do. We keep it super simple. We use those resources, and we have incredible conversations, life-changing conversations on just about any topic. And this we do, and we prioritize in our lives because we want to leave a legacy for them. You know, we make them do their homework. We make them pick a sport, to play a sport. Like, we want them to have extracurricular activities in their lives. And when it comes to a pursuit of God, we are actively involved with our kids, helping them pursue God. Parents, don't forget to do this, because you will leave a legacy with your kids when you do this. This is the greatest legacy. The greatest thing you can do in your life is to help someone pursue God. And the next greatest thing that you can do in your life, listen to this, the next greatest thing you can do in your life is to help someone else pursue God. I mean, there's nothing more important. And these aren't just my words. This is how Jesus saw it as well. This is the greatest purpose that you can have in your life. So I'm helping my kids pursue God. My wife and I are. But we're also looking around to other people in our small group, in our world, in our community, in our neighborhood, and we're inviting them into a pursuit of God as well. We're helping them pursue God as well. And in doing this, we're leaving a legacy for the next generation and the generation after that. You know, what I love about this is that this is something that Jesus called fishermen to do. I love that when Jesus came to the earth, he didn't go try recruiting, the super smart or the religious elite or politicians or businessmen. He just recruited regular, ordinary guys, a bunch of fishermen, a tax collector. They were really nothing to write home about. But Jesus picked these guys, and I think part of the reason he did it is because he wanted to show us that everyone who pursues God can have purpose. Everyone who pursues God can have a mission in their life. Everyone who pursues God can leave a legacy. I love that because I believe that not everyone can do math. I mean, not everyone can do it really well. Now, I'm not trying to give you young people an excuse not to do your homework. Every once in a while, I used to teach math and tutor math. Every once in a while, I'd run into a student who tried really, really, really hard, but couldn't do math. Not everyone has the ability to do math well. Not everyone can play sports well. Not everyone's going to be a great runner. Not everyone's going to be great at, one sport or the other. Not everyone's going to be, great at talking with people, being outgoing. You might have a different personality. There's a lot of things that you might not be able to do, but listen to this. Every single person who follows Jesus can help someone else follow Jesus. And so every single person can have a sense of mission and legacy. And you don't have to wrap up your identity in this one thing that you're bad at, or this other thing that you're bad at, or this other thing that you're decent at. You can know that your identity comes from your purpose in life, that you're a pursuer of God. And as a pursuer of God, you are a person with purpose. You can serve others. You can live on mission in your life, and you can leave a legacy by helping other people pursue God as well. I want to end today by showing a story video. We ended last week with a story video, and I want to end again today with a story video. I want you to see how someone's life was changed as they were driven by purpose to pursue God.
So one day, my pastor asked me to get more in the game. He said, Ryan, you should really be doing other things and having more purpose with your life. And I was like, I'm just trying to come in on Sunday and get out of here and not be asked to do a bunch of stuff. And he said, are you in a small group? You need to get in a small group. And I'm thinking, weird. I'm not trying to show up at people's houses that I don't know and be in a small group and tell them about my life. But anyway, I took what he said to heart, and he talked to me about something called mentoring, where basically you're just having intentional conversations with the people you already know, your family, your kids, your wife, your friends at work, or anybody else that you run into. So he introduced me to some resources to use online to sort of foster dialogue and conversations with my friends. And at first I thought, it's really organized. Is somebody going to want to be a part of a structured conversation? More importantly, who am I going to even find that wants to do that? I can get it done with my family and kids, but my friends. The interesting thing is, though, I have a lot of people already in my life that are talking to me about things that are important. One guy in particular is always talking about his marriage, the bumps and bruises sort of he takes and the conversations that they have about it. And it's easy as a friend to kind of tend to side with them. Oh man, are you kidding me? She can't let you go to the game? We can't go? You got to put your foot down, man. Who's wearing the pants in that family? Fact of the matter is, that's just not very constructive. So we're already setting the table for the kind of conversations that we should be having. But a lot of times I found myself not really being much of a friend at all, or very helpful at all. So that changed when one day we're talking on the phone, I'm driving home, and he's going, oh, what was me? And I said, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot. I was a little nervous to do it, but what do I have to lose? He's obviously talking to me for a reason. I said, listen, hey, you know what? There's a marriage video online I'd like you to watch with me. And I think we could kind of talk about some of the things that might help you solve some of these issues in your marriage. I think you'd probably be better off for it. So what ends up happening is he and I start meeting once a week. We just go out and have coffee or whatever. We'd watch a video there 3, maybe 4 minutes long. There's some sort of pre-made questions that kind of spur a conversation, in case you need them. And so we kind of started coming up with game plans on how to fix the little things, how we could be more kind at home or more helpful at home, how we could have more positive communication and those kinds of things. Well, the surprising thing to me was that after a month of meeting with my friend, weekly and having these intentional conversations, it's really been reciprocal. It's really started to change and reformat my life at home, particularly in this instance with my marriage. My wife doesn't mind me being around as much as she used to when I'd come home on vacation. Now I have purpose. I got lots of friends with all kinds of issues. Some people have marriage issues, financial issues, they're struggling raising their kids or whatever else, and they're always coming up. Not always coming up, but there's plenty of opportunities to get involved in conversations like that and give them constructive feedback, really. Have a framework to work from that points them in the right direction. Really what they're looking for is truth. And now I've got a resource to give them truth. So 20 years from now, the people I know and love, the people that know me, the people that show up to my funeral, hopefully that's quite a while from now, I'm hoping, they're not going to remember about the spreadsheets I put together, the financial projections I beat in June. They're not going to remember about the bonus check I chased all year long. What they're going to remember is the impact that I've had on their lives. I think we all really know that deep down. What did I do to affect these people's lives and give them a tool to use for the rest of their lives?